Yeah.
Energy.
Okay, we're going to be talking about hiring, getting hired in crypto. A very interesting topic. Just to start with, a quick show of hands. Who is already working in the crypto space right now? Okay, and how many people here are looking for something in crypto? Okay, so a bit of a mix. All right, nice. Okay, well, hopefully we will have some stuff that we chat about that is relevant to everybody. Thank you to my lovely guests for being here. So I wanted to start pretty broad and just talk about like how crypto hiring has changed over like the past few months, the past year. I will throw it over to my colleague Mitch because I know at Plexus we obviously have a bird's eye view on what's happening in hiring. So is there anything that you think is kind of changing over the last few months, or roles that you've seen pick up, roles that you've seen die down, and why you think that is?
Yeah, for sure. So obviously a lot changed earlier this year around the regulatory landscape, specifically places like the US, of course. So because of that, there's been a lot more hiring in sort of business development and sales, especially targeting things like institutional capital, and sort of things that go part and parcel of that are kind of things around legal and compliance. So whether it's kind of fractional hires just to get through this initial stage of understanding the new laws to follow, or bringing someone in-house, they're the kind of two that have noticed an uptick in, really.
Nice. Roisin, I know you just moved from Dhillon to Conduit, your in-house hiring for them. Are there any differences you see in how those two companies, or any companies you've worked on behalf of before, like differences in how they approach hiring?
Yeah, definitely. So at Dhillon, we would have hired for a very specific kind of cryptographic tech stack. So it was very difficult as an early stage project to be able to attract that kind of talent. So you really have to have a good like carrot to bring people in, and the right kind of people. So for us there, it was definitely the vision and the network infrastructure that attracted a lot of applications. At Conduit, we're like hiring very fast, I would say. We have a very strong product market fit at the moment, and we're growing and scaling very quickly. So we're hiring a lot quicker, but the team were very intentional with the tech stack that they started using. So we have a more broadly available skill set, I would say, but we're hiring much faster. So bringing people in. The bar doesn't drop, though. You have to keep that standard high when you're hiring, no matter what kind of space you're in, I think.
Yeah. I think that like one of the things that comes up quite a lot when we're talking about hiring crypto is like this offset between how important are the skills and how important is a culture fit. Jib, I don't know if you want to speak to that and like what you kind of look for more, or what you feel like is more important and why.
So for us specifically, we're quite focused on, we're more like of a smaller team. So a smaller team of like people who need to work on high efficiency systems and high security systems. And for us, generally, we actually focus a lot on culture fit because it's important that we can work together cohesively and communicate and trust each other to do the job that everyone needs to do. For us, mostly when it comes to like the actual skill set, is about do they meet a certain threshold, and kind of more importantly for me is like if they meet that threshold, do they have the ability to figure things out for themselves, sort of autonomously, and take ownership of whatever they need to do. So because a big part of our culture is just ownership and kind of just wanting to do the best work they can do, it lends itself well for people who are like very technically proficient in what we need them to do. So I'd say we focus a lot more on culture now, because I think we've made the mistake of hiring people purely for their skills, and they've been a very poor culture fit, and it always ends up badly, basically. So
yeah. Dean, do you agree with that, or?
Yeah, I think this ties into culture. One of the mistakes I made at the agency that I ran was primarily hiring people for experience. And then I'm now on the other end of the spectrum where I want to ideally hire people who are hungry, tenacious, and have a willingness to learn. I think that's more important than any years of experience, especially in crypto, because the market is dynamic. Things are consistently changing. There's new sectors every single day. So hiring someone with X amount of years of experience, you can't extrapolate that into the future to be like, oh, okay, this person's going to be great no matter what. So when people have these JDs with 10 plus years of experience, they're kind of kidding themselves to trying to be to their direct report saying, oh, this is the least risky option, this is the safest bet, let's pick this person. That's not to say they're going to actually perform. Hiring the person who's going to do whatever it takes to get the job done, and of course assessing for that is hard, but I think that's the optimal play.
How do you think, like, if someone's watching this here and they're like, okay, well, I'm hungry, I'm tenacious, but like, I'm applying for jobs and I'm not getting picked up because my resume doesn't necessarily have the experience, how do they then cut through?
I can answer that. I think it's a very valid point because I see it quite a lot. And my general response to anyone who asks me that is just like, in this space, in crypto specifically, it's actually very easy to do open source work and to do work that can be recognized publicly. I'd say in this industry, it's significantly larger than anywhere else. So with most people I speak to, if it's engineers specifically, I typically say, just contribute to an open source repository, get yourself like known within that space, within that ecosystem where you're contributing, and eventually you'll be known. I actually within crypto specifically, I actually discourage a lot of like younger engineers from doing applications at all, because generally when you're doing an application, you're going up against people who have lots of years of experience, and there are companies that still hire based off experience. So I generally always encourage just do as much as you can publicly to build a name for yourself, and once you get known for that, it becomes a lot easier to get hired.
Yeah. Mitch, would you add anything to that? Because I know you're kind of looking at it from the other side, where you're literally like going through applications on paper and you haven't met candidates. So what would the flip side of that be?
I would agree, to be honest. I would tend to say that the more sort of work you can come in and demonstrate you've done off your own back and contributed with no expectations on return, that's going to show that you're kind of bought into the space and things, because there's a lot of people just kind of going after the potential salaries on offer and things like this, the token allocations and stuff. But if you could show that with no guarantee return, you were still willing to put in the time outside of a full-time role, I think that's kind of gives a lot of confidence to founders making hires.
Yeah.
Just to add on to that as well, I would say like coming to events like this or more localized community events and actually getting in front of people, founders, people that are working in projects that you want to get involved in, like definitely getting that face-to-face time, or even reaching out in communities online, not just contributing if you're an engineer, but also if you're in back office or marketing. Just get yourself out there, meet people, connect. Like referrals and networks are definitely still where a high volume of applications and applicants will get jobs.
Do you think like that whole connect with founders thing like varies when depending on the size of the company? Because if it's a small company and you can actually meet the founder and have some sway, but if it's a company with like 10 hiring managers all hiring different things, like is
100%.
it still the same?
Probably not, but I still think it definitely adds to your profile. You might meet someone that's on a team that you want to get involved with. So I will always advocate for getting out there and getting yourself known within communities.
Yeah. I think I didn't ever really understand how important as a candidate it was to understand the size of company that you want to work for in crypto. Like there's a lot of startups that are obviously like a few people, and then that kind of approach like really works. But then sometimes, you know, you want to have a small team or you want to be part of a bigger thing. The way they kind of look for talent is probably going to be quite different, I think.
Just to add there, I would actually say that that's when you should probably look at agencies like yourselves or external recruiters and meet recruiters and make yourself known with recruiters, because if they have a job opportunity that comes up and they've met this amazing person that's really like eager to work, and they've met you and they know that you're looking, when the right match comes along, they will send you that opportunity. They'll remember you.
Okay, nice.
I just want to add one thing. If anyone's in the position kind of where I was 2 to 3 years ago, where I technically got into crypto in 2020, but I didn't have any full-time crypto experience. So I'm sure there's some people listening that haven't been in the industry and you're now trying to break in. We were touching on different strategies from early stage companies to late stage companies. The biggest thing that I did, and it worked then, and I guarantee it works now, is it sounds trite, but send hundreds of cold DMs. I genuinely probably sent thousands in the space of 6 months, and there's going to be a low hit rate, but it will work. Crypto, especially on crypto Twitter, you have access to anyone. I guarantee you, Brian Armstrongs to the Vitaliks to the Toleys, they all look at their DMs. Whether they reply to you or not, that's going to be about the quality of your DM, but please utilize cold DMs. That and events will be for sure a gateway to getting hired.
As a marketing person, what's a good cold DM then? How do I get someone's attention?
Yeah,
not just like, hey, give me a job.
No, exactly. Ideally, frankly, build your profile to start with. If you have kind of no following, that's a non-starter. You can go into what makes a good cold DM, but I think even before that, you have to have some semblance of credibility in your own portfolio with regards to, are you sharing insights? To Jib's point around GitHub and engineering, the same thing applies to GTM. Are you just sharing your thoughts about the space, any philosophical takes, and just being helpful and contributing to the space? If others see that, then they're more likely to respond to you. What won't work is having no posts and saying, yo, give me a job. Don't even bother with that.
Lay your foundations.
Exactly.
Basically.
Yes.
Nice. Mitch, I wanted to ask you, obviously, again, you're looking at loads of CVs all the time. Are there any clear red flags, green flags? Could be anything. It could be down to the formatting of the CV. It could be things they're saying or not saying.
Yeah, I'd say more of a recent problem's obviously the AI slop that you see.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
So avoid that, or at least try and hide the fact you've done it if you can't come up with your own points. But yeah, I think mainly where they're not able to kind of just clearly lay out tangible wins or achievements they made in their previous roles. Realistically, rightly or wrongly, hiring managers are going to look at your resume for 10 to 15 seconds and have a pretty strong feel for if you're someone that they want to then read further on. So if you can keep everything kind of succinct as possible, that's always advised, because you do see a lot of 10 to 15 bullet point sections across 10 pages, and no one's got time for that when there's 300-400 applicants, unfortunately. But yeah.
That first section of your CV is so important now as well. Like that first top section, I would say. Like try and get your main points that you want that hiring manager to see in that first section.
Yeah, and if it's too generic as well, it's just not going to be, like, you effectively have to sell your skill set on the CV, right? So, I think not putting too big a blurb about me and all this kind of stuff, no one's going to read that kind of thing. Just tailor it to each position. I know it's a lot, but tailor it to as many specific roles as you can, so that it shows the full intention of why you're going for that specific role.
Jib, I know you have hired predominantly like through network, so you're not probably not looking at loads of resumes and stuff. Are there any like green and red flags that come up for you just in terms of like when someone's referring someone on, or you're talking to someone you've been introduced to, like what you're looking out for?
So generally when it comes to referrals, I wouldn't have asked the person if I think they're going to give me a red flag referral. So that's kind of like, that never really happens. But in terms of like when I actually interact with the person, as I mentioned, the kind of thing I'm looking at is like, the biggest thing I look at is actually their ego. Sort of, are they someone who is like a bit of a diva to work with? Can they learn? Can they take criticism? Can they take responsibility for things that have gone wrong? A good question I like to ask is always like, what's something that's gone wrong, when you've been working at your place previously? And typically when I meet someone who owns up to it, acknowledges like what happens and stuff like that, that's usually a very good sign. But when you meet someone who's sort of like, oh, it was because this person did this and whatever, they try and like get out of it. It's very like, seems like they're not comfortable with talking about like things that the things that like really were their fault. So yeah, ego is probably the primary red flag I look for when I'm speaking to someone, because typically when we've made a mistake hiring, it's always been an issue of their ego being a bit too fragile. So yeah.
Do you think there's a lot of fragile egos in crypto?
Yes, definitely. Definitely there is.
No way.
Yeah.
On that note, I guess, are there any hiring situations that haven't worked out very well for you?
Oh yeah, lots. Yeah.
Do you want to share anything about those, or like why you think it? Like, is there? I guess more to the point is like if someone doesn't work out in their role, does it then make you look back and go, how would I have seen this earlier?
Yeah.
How did I, if anyone out here is thinking about hiring or they want to grow their team, how do you try and avoid that kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's always a case of you have to sort of look at the reason you hired them in the first place, and then look at sort of what the reason is in the end that you wanted to let them go. I generally, when I first started the company, we were more hesitant to fire people, but as I've gone on, I realized that actually firing people has the effect of dramatically improving the morale of the rest of the team, and as a result, everything gets better with how you work. So, generally speaking, I always say fire if something is clearly wrong. If you're especially in a startup situation, just get them out of there. Yeah. But I think to answer the original question, which was about
memorable.
Yeah.
Bad hires.
Yeah, so essentially we hired this guy who was extremely, extremely technically proficient at what we needed him to do. But the problem was he was not very good at working within a team. He also wanted to build a team, but wasn't a very good manager. And as I mentioned, he had an ego around his ability to do that. And he ended up hiring a team that was too big for him to manage. He ended up kind of offloading a lot of work to them when he was the one who was meant to have the technical expertise. And in the end, it resulted in a lot of argument and disruption with the rest of the team, including the engineers, including other quants. And so as a result, we actually ended up having him on the team for way too long. We should have hired him maybe 9 months before we actually did. And just because of this idea of you need someone who is very technically proficient, that cost us a lot of efficiency and headache that we could have eliminated a lot earlier. So I kind of learned from there that culture fit is very important because it affects the team morale, and team morale is very important, especially in a startup stage where things can go wrong all the time, and you're so tight knit. You can't be dealing with politics at that stage.
And you just don't want anything to muddy the waters.
Exactly.
They say that about, I remember, I think it was one of my bosses was speaking about that as well. When you bring people in, are they going to overall raise the levels and the talent there and bring everyone up, or is it someone who's going to dilute down the talent, in which case you don't really want that? Have you guys got any other hires that have been particularly memorable? It could be someone great that really stood out to you, or it could be someone bad.
There's an example that comes to mind where I've been in the agency world. I was stuck between two hires. One, going back to my prior point, who had 10 years of ABC experience and interviewed amazingly, and there was one guy who's, I'm actually going to name him, his name's Zabdi. He's got a wife and a kid. He's 22, which is insane. He's kind of doing two jobs at the same time, part-time and full-time. And I just didn't understand how he would have the time to do all of this, but he just gave me the impression in the interviews that he was look, Dean, I may not know much about ghostwriting. I've done it here and there before, but he had showed me a wide variety, a spectrum of tasks, that things where he had no experience and he just got the job done. And that's ultimately all you care about. I don't think you really care how it gets done as a manager, you just care that it gets done. And then there's this other person who's giving me all the kind of, the interview is almost too good, frankly. It's they're saying all the right things and they're giving me all the references. I just kind of got a bad gut feeling. And then he turned out by far to be the best employee and had a 10 out of 10 CSAT, client satisfaction score, was our most impressive employee on a revenue to cost multiple, and just by far outperformed the whole team. So one is take a bet on someone, because if you do take a bet on someone, they will kind of be eternally loyal to you, and they will do whatever it takes to pay back that respect.
So vibes over ticking a box.
Yeah, vibes and hustle and tenacity.
I think, the technical skills will get you in the door, right? But it's the mindset that will really get you to stay and go far in a role.
Yeah. Roisin and Mitch, I just wondered if you had ever seen, on behalf of clients, when they've been super excited about a hire or one that's particularly gone wrong, and kind of what, you're the middleman between that, so what's different? Bad hires, good hires?
I can actually talk to a good experience, or quite a funny situation that happened, which kind of plays into what you were saying around someone that's really dedicated and cares more than someone that's more qualified. So we were looking for actually a technical writer, and it was one of the first few months of my time at Plexus. And there was this lady who's already established technical writer for, a well-known project, and she was going for a similar position for a team hiring from European time zones up to Eastern US time zone. And she was on the West Coast, and she really wanted this role. She really liked the sound of the team, and she knew the person that would be leading her team. So she basically was with someone that was European, and they had been together 10 or 15 years, but never got married. But this role effectively caused her to get married, to then relocate to Europe to get the job. And I don't know if there's any stronger commitment than that. So she effectively got a wedding turned around in a week.
Oh, love that.
To be able to get married, to get the visa, to live in Paris and take the job, which I thought was crazy. But yeah, so it goes to show, and she stayed there for well over a year and a half, 2 years.
Which in crypto is a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, there are people out there that are willing to do a lot to benefit a company. You just kind of got to seek them out by testing their commitment in various different ways, and that was obviously a very clear way to do it.
Nice. I just want to briefly touch on this because I think it comes up a lot and it's kind of a whole big discussion in itself. But to everybody, do you think, and particularly like in your own projects, let's say, is it important to have a very crypto degen-y background, or can you be coming from a Web 2 environment and still make it? Or are you not going to make it?
I mean, so we're a decentralized, we're a DeFi team, so we're like, our entire product is on-chain. Our marketing channels are predominantly via crypto Twitter, and you know, through the network via Telegram. So for us, it's kind of mostly a factor is like the people who we want are people who are very familiar with the tech stacks in those spaces. So with our engineers, for example, they're typically quite experienced with what we're dealing with. And that kind of lends itself to people who are more crypto native. I don't hire anyone who doesn't do on-chain stuff because they don't really have an appreciation or understanding of what they're actually doing on-chain. So when it comes to my engineers, I'm very like, I pay attention to like, have they done stuff on-chain before, even out of curiosity? Are they actually a user of on-chain applications? And then when it comes to like BD marketing people, as I mentioned, because our primary marketing channel is via crypto Twitter and Telegram, it's sort of like, do they have a good following and network within those channels? So for us, it being crypto native is very important.
Highly important.
But you know, there are obviously lots of companies where it doesn't matter. In fact, I know a lot of companies who are more TradFi oriented who prefer you not to be crypto native, which is quite funny. But yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a big balance there, and it definitely depends a lot on the company. And back to your point earlier, Sarah, about the company size. So for Jib, I can imagine like a small team, you really want everyone to be on the same page, and that affects the culture as well in the company, right? Because there is a huge difference between TradFi and crypto culture. So that was a big learning point for me, actually. But I have a personal kind of experience in that. So I joined Dhillon when I had TradFi background. So I had a big up and on ramp to get to understand that crypto culture. But there is definitely room for more of those traditional back office roles. And actually, I would argue that in some cases, those skills are really, really important. So like, paying people, building out a company from an operational standpoint, having the TradFi experience there is actually, I would say, crucial to scale a company as well, because you're kind of bringing those, I guess, tried and tested ways of building, and you're bringing them into a new space, so it's actually quite valuable.
Yeah, makes sense. Roisin and Dean, I know you both recently left things to look at new career moves, which is really exciting. I wanted to talk a little bit about how you made the choice about where you want to go next and what you were looking for, and whether you took like an interesting approach to it. Dean, I don't know if you want to share.
Yeah, I can speak to
your big announcement last week.
Yeah, I know. I can speak a bit to that strategy. So I left my agency, must be 2 weeks ago now. Only publicly announced it a couple of days back. I think it was on Friday. My strategy is that I left. I rang up 5 mentors that I really respected in the space, kind of VCs, founders, engineers, just kind of a breadth of skilled people. They frankly gave me great advice, and the best thing I heard is I was asking them a bunch of questions, basically being like, help me, give me life advice. And they were like, Dean, what are you optimizing for? You know, is it, you know, what do you want to do in 3 to 4 years? Do you want to run your own thing? Do you want to work for someone else? Just figure out what you're optimizing for. So then I created a fancy Google Doc, answered that question, which is being an entrepreneur. I want to work for a great founder who's going to teach me those operating skills so then I can run my own thing in 3 to 4 years. So that's what I'm optimizing for beyond anything else. Then, over the past 10 days, I've now spoken to 50 plus founders, 25 plus VCs, and just any name it, I've spoken to them. So volume negates luck. I'm a huge believer in that, which is why I was speaking to the cold DMs earlier on. So I took a huge sample size of calls. That's my big tip. Don't speak to like 5 companies. Don't take your first offer. Get a huge breadth and a huge sample size. And then actually reference check the company. I think this is especially a British problem, but I hear a lot of people getting excited when they get a job. Yeah. I think that's a terrible mindset. Everyone here should read Hasib's job offers like article. You don't get a job, it's economics. You're giving your supply to a company. They get you. So like flip the mindset there. You don't get a job, they get to interview you, they get the pleasure of hiring you, blah, 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 blah. So that's the mindset. Large sample size, reference them. When I was speaking to a couple companies, I was in a meeting, and at the end, I asked the CEO for a prior employee and manager check. And he was like, well, I've never heard that before. And I was like, right, get used to it, mate. So I referenced him a bunch of times, and he just seemed shocked. And that kind of baffled me. So I think people should do way more due diligence on the company they're going to join, because you're probably going to spend more time there than you spend with your spouse or your children. Like, especially in crypto, you're going to be working a shit ton. So if they're going to invest in you, you invested them, reference check them widely, speak to every team member. I think a lot of hiring managers are going to hate me for this, but especially the teams I'm joining, but I did my due diligence. So large sample size and due diligence is well, hopefully is going to work for me.
Yes. I think it's also like speaks to your kind of self-confidence and self-assurance in like your own skills and your own talent. If you kind of know your worth and you're like, as you said, I'm not just going to take the first thing. I want to make sure it's a good fit for me as well. And I think sometimes, you know, when you're on the candidate search and, you know, you're getting rejected all the time, it's really easy to like get that knocked down. And I think you need to like try and keep it up as much as possible. I want to give a bit of time for questions. So please get your questions ready. Just before that, I guess just to end, if you were going to improve anything about the kind of hiring process or the crypto talent kind of space, what would your change be? How would you improve it?
I think I would just, for applicants, I'd really just very strongly give the advice of just do something impressive within whatever your target is. Like, whenever you do something impressive, you can ride that really well and people will know you for that thing. I see too many people just writing like blanket CV applications in crypto when it's actually so much easier to just build a network within this space compared to anywhere else. Like I'm kind of blown away by how easy it is to build a network and access founders and things like that in this space. And so I really encourage people to just do something objectively impressive in whatever your target is. If you can't do that, you know, I would rethink whether the space is right for you, but you know, it's just something that's what I generally advise. Yeah, I think that's like, I just think that advice should be more common, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think mine would go more from the company or the project perspective. And one thing a founder said to me before, which has really stuck and proven throughout my career, is hire slow, fire fast. So slow down the hiring. I always say with hiring managers, if you can't really define what a role is going to look like for 40 hours a week, then you're not ready to hire, right? You have to be able to be very descriptive about what that person's going to do when they get in the door. We don't just want bums in seats. Every seat should serve a purpose.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, I think that planning part is key, because when you do then put that role up, you need to be able to then sort of make a very clear vision to the people that are interviewing on what they're going to be doing and almost sell the opportunity. I mean, from a lot of what our clients look for, it's quite a select and very small candidate pool quite often with quite niche skills required. It's almost pitching the role to the candidates often. And I think when you do have people that are willing to allocate their time, you know, to a technical assignment or a take-home or something like this, you move with speed and you're very clear on what the process looks like. Because let's say you tell them it's 3 stages long, and then all of a sudden you want them actually to have a conversation here and a conversation there, and now it's 5 or 6 calls. They're thinking, are they unsure on me? They're going to start getting cold feet. And that's where maybe you lose a candidate, and now you're looking for another 2-3 months. So yeah, I think kind of move with purpose and be very clear in your vision for the hire, both short term and long term.
Yep.
Just to add to that, like when we hire at Rysk, we actually are very deliberate about the ownership aspect. So we basically only ever hire if there's something that just needs to be owned by someone. So we did a hire recently because we're building out a new product, and I needed an engineer who could just take complete control of that product. So I think, as you said, like having a plan for what that person's doing is actually very important, because I just literally spoke to all these candidates, said, this is exactly what you're going to be building. You own this now. You
own this now, don't you?
Yeah, you don't. You own this now. If you fuck up, that's on you. So yeah.
Okay. Did anyone have any questions before we finish? Go on. I don't know if there's a mic or whether you could just shout at us.
Hey, Sarah. This is a question to the whole panel. How open are project founders or hiring managers to candidates who have other roles, like maybe they might be doing side hustles? This is Web3, so a lot of them have like other things going on, like side hustles. They might be building their own businesses. How open are project managers and hiring managers to that kind of candidate?
I've got one thought there. I don't think it's a binary answer. I think it depends how much leverage you have. So like, if you're the best candidate in any given market, it's just all economics for me. If you're the best out of the whole batch of supply, then you could do whatever you want. You could go like horse riding all day, and they would still do whatever it takes to get you. But like if you're one of a million candidates and they have the leverage, then they probably wouldn't be okay with that. So I think you have to kind of look in the mirror and be like, am I one of one? And will this company do whatever it takes to get me? Then frankly, you could probably do whatever you want, charge them a high price, and get away with it.
I think I would add to that as well, like it brings up a good point, and it's one that I try to drive home with my teams as well, where it's like, is this a full-time role, or is this something that we could outsource? And like to your point, if it's like a technical, like really technical challenge that you're a problem that you need to solve, could you outsource that little piece of work to someone that maybe has something else going on but is the best at what they do? But also you have to remember that we are working in Web3 and crypto, and it is super intense. You're talking most of the time about small teams, so to even have something else going on the side is quite difficult, in my opinion, if you are taking a full-time role.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the person. So for me, for example, I did my PhD and was running my company at the same time. I am somewhat guilty of that, of doing 2 things at the same time. But it really just depends on the person's ability to manage multiple things. Like some people just think they can do it, but they actually have really bad time management, and so you can notice it in the quality of their work. So I generally think like it really just depends on the person, and like, do they actually know how to manage their time? I'd say the vast majority of people actually don't know how to manage their time effectively, and so as a result, it shows up in their work quality, and then that's when you have to have a conversation about it. But yeah, generally, I think for me, it's not like always a red flag. If I think they have the capability to manage it, I'm okay with it. But if I don't, I'll probably
And I think transparency is quite key as well.
Yeah.
If you're going to be hiding it and they somehow find out, especially if there's like a conflict of interest, get pretty, not great. So I think being upfront about it, if you're able to be, is certainly a good way. And then, like if they're not okay with it, then you're gonna have to make a decision there, and you can find out very early whether it's right or not, as opposed to getting into murky waters later down the line when you've already started.
Yeah, I had just when I joined recently, we had a case of that, and the work was suffering, and it was after that person was let go that we actually found out that they had been working 2 jobs, and our CEO was not very happy about it. So yeah, I think you're right with the transparency as well.
I think it can also look a bit like sometimes it can, even if this isn't the case, it can come off like you don't know what you want to do, like you're doing a bit of everything, you're just trying out like loads of different things, and people can perceive that as, are, you know, we see it when we get the same person apply for like 5 different job roles, and we're like, well, they've applied for a COO, they've also applied for a CMO, they've also applied, and we're kind of like, what are they? Like, what do they do? And when people have to make like very quick assumptions about you, sometimes, and this is like, you know, almost like a personal brand thing, it's like you have to just be like, this is what I do, I'm the best at it, and I'm going to nail it. And then you can go horse riding all day, like Dean said, which I'm like definitely now as my dream. All right, thanks guys. I think we don't have any more time for questions, but obviously we will be around. So if you would like to come and talk about your hiring plans or getting a role in crypto, please come find us on the Plexus stand. And I'm sure these guys are happy to have a chat as well. So yeah, thanks very much. Very good.